Hello everyone, my name is Phil Calvert and a very warm welcome to the Financial Advisor Mastermind and Challenge. Throughout this week, advisors, leading experts and consultants to the financial planning profession are sharing amazing insights into just what makes a world-class financial advice business. Today I'm delighted to be speaking with someone who is an expert on helping executives and business people to speak and present themselves with confidence. She's a former presenter on GMTV, Sky and BBC News. And in addition to her business, Crystal Business Coaching, she's also a consultant and visiting professor at INSEAD in Paris. Please welcome Jacqui Harper. How are you, Jacqui?
I am great. Fantastic to be here.
Great to see you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. So just first of all, let's hear a bit more about your backstory. I know you you presented the BBC News for about 9 years, something like that.
Yeah. So I worked for all of the networks really, but the BBC for the biggest chunk. And I did the breakfast show, which meant getting up at 3 a.m. I had a chat show on BBC Two for a while, which was good fun, you know, politics, pop music, fashion, which was also good fun. But really, when people think of me and my television career, it's probably news, BBC News, interviews. I started in the regional news. I did the national bulletins. And then I did jump ship. I went to the commercial station. I went to GMTV, as you mentioned. Yeah. Quite different working in the commercial environment. You get a lot more money on clothes. Clothes and makeup, you do a lot better on the commercial side.
Yeah.
Again, it was breakfast television, which was really, really good fun. And I also did work at Sky News as well. And their bulletins, well, they're not really bulletins. You're on air for 3 hours. And it's rolling news. And that is really fast-paced, full of adrenaline, huge fun. I really enjoyed it.
Over those years, you were doing that for quite a long time. Can you remember any of the big stories of the day that you broke?
Yeah, so I remember, well, just watching earlier this week, there was an anniversary of the Satanic Verses. And I remember in my very early careers, all the book burning, you know, we were there when the book burning was going, and then the fatwa came, and that whole story grew. And it's interesting that is right now in the news. There were also riots in the 90s. You know, some of the really big stories in London, we were there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's something about being in a newsroom and you can actually see it, very tangible, when a huge story breaks, everybody dumps what they're doing, we throw out the running order, and then we just completely regroup. And it happens in minutes. We'll send out crews to get the story. We start to get phone feeds. I mean, it really is. Obviously, sometimes these are terrible stories. You know, they're bombings. They're things that are utterly dreadful. But in terms of being a television journalist, you are just so alive in those moments.
How do you feel that today's TV journalists are handling the whole Brexit thing? It seems to be just non-stop all the time at the moment. And as we speak today, I think the BBC are trying to sort of redress the balance a bit and try and present some of the things that consumers want to hear about. How do you feel they're getting on with it?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I think it was this morning on the Today programme. John Humphreys was saying, and today, it's important, breaking news, no interviews about Brexit. And it really is. It's just been utterly saturated. But it is a big deal. This is one of the biggest stories in our generation. And you can't not try to give people an understanding of what it means, where we're going. We don't feel like we've got very far because nothing has actually happened. So I do understand why there's been such extensive coverage, you know, and quite thoughtful coverage. But as a human being, even I am a journalist, and I'm actually sick to death of hearing the word Brexit. And I think it's refreshing that they are recognizing that people are just fatigued by the endless conversations, but followed by nothing really changing. I think that's what really bothers people.
Yeah. Now, when you came out of journalism with the big organisations, you and I have worked together. We worked out with a bank in New York. shortly after 9/11, and another bank out in Amsterdam as well, which were great times. But I'm quite also interested in your work that you do at INSEAD. I guess there'll be a number of people who aren't entirely sure what that is. Tell us what it is and what you do.
I might need to even mention who INSEAD are, because they're not really a household name. You know, they're an unusual university because it's only a business school. No English department, no music department. It's all about business. And so you've got your MBA programs, you've got executive education, which I do a lot of work in. And it's a very top university. I mean, I would say that our rivals, friendly rivals, would be Harvard Business School. You know, it is right at the top in terms of global business schools. And I teach on the MBA programs, leadership presence, business communication. And I do a lot on the executive education. And sometimes those are executive MBAs, but they are also bespoke programs. With global leaders. And one of the things I absolutely love about INSEAD, I mean, when you say global, it's kind of one of those words, what do you mean? But when I go there, you know, there's a classroom of maybe 50 participants with 30 plus nationalities from every single continent. I mean, it truly is a global environment, and you know, it's a place for excellence, and they keep me on my toes. They help me to develop my work and my own game, and I find that work fabulous. I just enjoy it so much.
It's interesting to see business skills and how they've developed. And I think in terms of the skills that you have and what you teach, certainly in the early days, it was more a thing around presentation skills, which are clearly important. And actually, although we're living in an internet age now, personal presentation skills seem to be becoming even more important. People want to see the whites of their eyes. But I'm increasingly hearing this phrase, executive presence. What exactly is that?
Yeah, I'll try and demystify it for you. So presence for me is two components: internal presence and external presence. And the internal presence is kind of, you know, our thinking, our thoughts, you know, what we're feeling as we're going into a meeting, sitting down at the desk with a client, you know, what's going through your mind. And, you know, that shapes hugely your presence, how you show up. And then the external presence is probably what you've just said. So that's very much voice and body language. But it's also looking at the message as well. And you know, I'm a journalist, so it's looking at how you express ideas, how you make them memorable. And you know, with IFAs, it's important for them to be very clear in the messaging, really clear about the information that they're sharing with clients or explaining to clients. So I see presence, executive presence, as being those two things. And really, executive presence is about achieving, when I'm developing it, is about achieving mastery in your presentation skills. And presence is absolutely, if you've got those two things developed to quite an extent, you're on your way. Really, it is really quite powerful.
Interesting. And I know I might even pick this statistic up from you some years ago, but it's a statistic I've been carrying around for many, many years now. But apparently presentation skills training, more people bunk off at the last minute on presentation skills courses than just about anything else, because quite frankly, it's not everyone's idea of fun, is it?
No. I mean, people will think about presentation training, you know, a coercive side. You know, you've got to attend, and also there's a slightly kind of, well, I don't really need it. You know, I can talk. I'm a great communicator, and you do get quite a lot of this kind of suspicion. Not quite sure if it's of any value. And I hope that, you know, when I get people in front of me, that they can see the huge value of presentation training. And today, presentation training has moved on. It's about how you present ideas. So it's not just about standing up and speaking on a platform. It's about communicating online and your online presence, communicating on the phone. And presence even shows up in email. And in terms of our business communication, the most prevalent form of communication is the email. And so your presence is what people think about you? What lingers when you're not there, after the event's done, after you've put the phone down?
That's interesting. So just to give us a bit more about how it shows up in email, because I came across a fantastic piece of software not all that long ago called Crystal Knows.
Oh, right.
And it's a piece of AI. It plugs into LinkedIn first and foremost, but also plugs into your email as well. And it uses, and it's incredibly accurate. When you are about to send an email to someone or a message to them on LinkedIn, it tells you what sort of words, phrases, and approach you should take with this particular person.
Right.
Which is cheating a bit, but I guess it helps. But for an ordinary person in business communicating by email, what are the sort of things that they could be thinking about in terms of their presence?
Right. Well, we'll do a little challenge at the end, so I can explain this in detail a little bit later. But I think it's about being really clear. Who are you at your essence? What is your purpose? And how does that show up every day? Once you have real clarity on that, this is big stuff. This is stuff that you really need to take time with, reflect, and check in with other people. Then you've got something to take in, a real clear guide for your email. So, for example, I've got when I think about my purpose, which took me ages to discover, is to help people soar. And not as in saw a piece of wood, soar up in the air and fly. Okay, and that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do with my book. That's what I want to do when I'm teaching, is to help people really to just really soar in what they do. So for me, it's about moving. It's about moving yourself in terms of your emails. Having a template. So, for example, I've got a thing about myself that whenever I show up in a meeting, on a conference call, I will be professional, I'll be confident, and I'll be warm.
Okay.
When I'm writing an email, sometimes I just knock out this email and I think, you know what, it's all professional, everything's there, but there's no warmth in there. I'm not really connecting. So I will check myself and pause and add something that just has some warmth to it and makes it feel like two people connecting rather than just the functional thing of getting the job done.
That's interesting. So are you to some extent alluding to a kind of personal branding that shows up every time you communicate with someone, whether it's by email, whether it's on the phone, and you're saying you need to consciously think about who am I and what am I trying to get across?
Absolutely, you got it in one. It is about every call, every email, every meeting, that there's a constant presence, that you have really thought about what that is for you. Everyone's different. Everyone will have different qualities that will matter to them. And I encourage people, when they're thinking about their presence, there's a fabulous phrase of kind of, dwell in the place of possibility. And I love that. So it's about taking away this, I can't, maybe I couldn't, of these beliefs that restrict us, and actually just letting it go. If you're going to soar, you've got to let the chains go and really be who you are. And I think when you start to dwell in the place of possibility, that's your best self, who you are when everything is working. That's where you start with this whole presence branding thing. And it is something that's constant. Once you've figured it out, it's something that you stay with.
That sounds like a change to the way the corporate world has traditionally wanted people to present themselves. When you and I have worked together, there are certain basics that we try to teach people in terms of how they present themselves. And quite often it models a corporate approach or a corporate vibe. But there does seem to be a trend now that organizations are actually encouraging people at all levels to let some of themselves come through in how they present themselves.
I think that's right. And I think at the heart of that change is this business about communicating, generating trust. Leaders who we can trust what they say, their ideas, and we can trust their vision. And you only get that trust when you see the whole person. And I think, you know, communication now is about being authentic. You know, they go hand in hand, this whole business of who you trust and why you trust someone. If you feel they're authentic, and we were talking off air about the Oscars, and, you know, Olivia Colman, a fabulous Oscar-winning actress, is a great example in my mind of someone who is utterly authentic. It's very rare in business that you get someone who is able to be totally unguarded. She sees it, she reacts, she says what's on her mind, and she utterly trusts herself. It's very courageous. She trusts herself in that moment that she will be fine, and, you know, what she is good enough. And she's utterly endeared us to you know, to her as a result of that. And I think in business, you know, we all talk about the VUCA world. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous, and on top of that we've got Brexit uncertainty. So this idea of connecting to people and trusting people and the people that lead us is crucial.
My dad always used to say to me, you know, people buy people. They always have done and they will do, however you are choosing to communicate. I certainly remember we used to do presentation skills training where there was a right way to stand. There was a right place to look. There was a right intonation in the voice. But and much of that is still important. But when we now look at leaders like Gary Vaynerchuk, and we look at people like Elon Musk, who are almost the extreme ends of personal presence, it's quite, I suppose we're living in a much more informal business world now.
Yeah, informal and diversified. You know, what is good communication, you know, is different in different sectors and in different people. And I welcome the fact that we haven't got this very narrow view of what good communication or good presentation now looks like, and that the focus is actually really connecting, you know, with who you're talking to, and attention, you know, really giving people your attention. It's interesting. I think, well, we have, I think, what was it? There's a wonderful headline that human beings have a lower attention span than a goldfish. And goldfish has 9 seconds, and we have 8 seconds. And the thing is, you know, attention is important. You know, to be able to communicate with people, you need to be able to give them your attention, to notice nuances. You know, they give us information about how they're responding, about whether we are actually getting anything in terms of trust from the conversation that we're having. And, you know, attention is a really important part of developing communication.
But perhaps we could explore that one a little bit. I mean, attention's not just about being really good at listening, is it?
That's part of it. No, it is about holding attention. I mean, if we've got 8 seconds, the average time a human being can hold attention, you know, that presents quite a lot of challenges. So people get distracted quite easily. If you are preparing for a presentation or a meeting, you can waste an awful lot of time when you're doodling and getting distracted, and not noticing when you're getting distracted. So it's noticing when something's changing, when your attention is not there. That's one thing about being, you know, really, really economic with your time. But it is also about being in a space where you can really see what's going on, and you can be attuned to the people around you, and you can build relationships that are just deeper.
Yeah. In terms of communication, a lot of presentation skills and communication skills coaches, it's very much about storytelling these days. And I'd be interested to explore that with you, because yes, human beings are hardwired to listen to stories. Is it as simple as that? Just being able to be a good storyteller?
Yeah, stories are utterly irresistible. Our brains just love stories because they give us patterns that we can latch onto and connect to ideas. And also, if the story is told well enough, all the different senses in the brain are fired up. You know, what you see, what you hear, what you feel. All of that is going on. So I think the issue for me with storytelling is there's a lot of it, and it's not always great. Mm-hmm. And I think in business, I think you've got a little bit of a time span issue. You can't spend forever telling a story. It needs to be almost journalistic and TV-like, really quite short, really quite focused, so that you hit the spot pretty quickly, and then you get onto the point of the story. So, I come from an industry that's built on storytelling. News stories are what makes my industry. The Oscars, there's another industry. Its movies are just fabulous stories on a big screen. We have an irresistible pull for stories, but I think people need to look at how effectively they're telling them. And how effectively they're using them. And I think if you've got 10 stories in a business presentation, that's probably rather too much, probably.
Yes.
Depending on you, some people can do it. I hate to be prescriptive, because I say that and I'll go to a presentation and somebody will lace it with lots of stories and it'll work. So I don't want people to think it can never work, but you would have to work pretty hard.
Yeah.
If you've got so many.
Now, you do a lot of executive coaching, and that often sounds like it's something that's only really of relevance or taken up by senior executives in very large organizations. But I'm imagining the same techniques can apply to anybody in business, a small business owner, perhaps a small financial advice firm. How could coaching help them?
Yeah, well, I would say big time. When I was being trained as an executive coach, it took a year. It was like doing a master's degree, and it was very rigorous. But there were people in the room that were life coaches. They were not going to go on to work in the business. And I would encourage any IFA who wants to develop themselves. You just know there are some things that are just getting in your way. Maybe you get ready for a presentation, you get really nervous, or you don't speak up in meetings. There'll be something that you're doing in business that you could do better, or you could challenge and improve on. And life coaches are a huge source. I mean, you need to, be a bit careful, because the word coach has got a label that seems to fit all kinds of people and backgrounds and qualification. But I think if you're discerning, I would encourage life coaches, if there's something that really they think they could address, to explore life coaches, because it's not the same price band. Executive coach, the whole thing, the engagements are 3 months, 6 months, and the way that you work in a corporation, in terms of keeping all the records, providing lots of research material for your clients, a life coach wouldn't have to do. But the actual technique about how you get adults to change behavior, they have that.
There's a more and more financial advisors and financial planners. Quite a lot of them don't like the word coach being used, but most of them freely admit that the work they do with clients now is more akin to coaching in some shape or form. It's rather less about sticking together investment plans. Obviously, that's part of it. But a lot of it is around helping clients to discover what they want out of life, that maybe they've forgotten is something they wanted, and to communicate with them in a way that really lifts them and gets them to pay attention. So it's certainly skills they could be learning, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about IFAs, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, it's about money and sorting people out. And I think it's something much more special and much more interesting than that. It's about dreams. I mean, it's about what I'm going to do when I retire and there's a new chapter with adventure and interesting things to do. Or it's about, the people that I love being in a new home and starting a new chapter in that sense.
Yeah.
But, IFAs have this rather wonderful job and really interesting opportunity to help people fulfill their dreams. And so, as you say, the whole interaction between the IFA and the potential client is about discovery, listening to the language, what are the needs, what are the emotions that, that client is really expressing. And really what you're doing is help them to find the solutions that help them meet their dreams. So it is coach-like, in the activity.
If you're a financial advisor and you're sitting face to face with a client, either in your office or their home or wherever,
Yeah.
and you need to connect with these people in a way that they want to trust you, they like you, they're happy to share, what sort of techniques could advisors be thinking about? What could they be doing face to face in a room? What sort of techniques could they be thinking about that could start to really up their game in terms of how they communicate?
Right, so it's all about connection. So in terms of the body, one of the things that you can do is eye line. Eye contact is so powerful. Just making the connection and looking into the person's eyes, the whites, is hugely powerful. I think in terms of connection, you can also look at the way that you question people, so that the way that you get to understand their story. So that's what you're really trying to do. What their story is and what it has been to date is also part of where they're going. So it's really about what really matters to this person, and who is this person? Give yourself the space to find out who you're really talking to, as well as understanding what they need. I think also, we talked about being a bit open yourself, and there's a wonderful kind of concept of the power of vulnerability. And what I mean, I don't mean to burst into tears in front of your client. What I mean is about, who you are is good enough, and maybe sharing some of your stories, just being, your authentic self. Still professional. Obviously, this is a professional conversation, but it's a personal conversation, and the territory you're in is deeply personal.
Yeah.
So I would encourage IFAs to look at connections, what they're talking about themselves, what they're sharing about themselves. The other thing I would say, and this sounds a little bit crazy, is about pausing. Okay, pause, shut up. So that you can really hear what people are saying.
Yeah.
When you pause, you're also processing and you're also thinking, but you're also giving space to the person that you're talking to. And that, these are quick hits that you can do to help you connect with people. I have another one. I have one more, which is slightly unusual one. So this is a new one that one of my colleagues at INSEAD introduced me to, and it's the attitude of gratitude. And when I first came across this, my colleague said, it's part of business communication. We're helping people to, practice gratitude. And I thought, yeah, right, how, what, why, all of those sort of things. And I looked into it a bit more, and there's compelling research that actually, if you practice the actual act of gratitude daily, so this might be writing it down, some people, in a religious context will pray, prayer of gratitude, that it actually impacts your presence. It actually impacts your social interaction. And I jokingly say to people, when I practice gratitude to my husband, I'm a lot nicer to him. But the research is staggering. University of Berkeley has a happiness center, and that's they're doing lots of research into gratitude and how it impacts us as human beings and also as leaders. And they're using fMRI scans to see what happens to the brain when we practice gratitude. And I'll just mention one bit of research which I came across, which was they got the participants of the study to write for 21 days a letter of gratitude. And they found the results were remarkable, that their people had enhanced empathy, their social interaction with other people was better. So I share that with IFA. Think about it, keep an open mind. The research is quite compelling.
That's really interesting. You're not the first person I've heard say something like this. I know Tony Robbins is a great exponent of gratitude. He says, when you are being grateful for something, it is impossible to feel grumpy about something else. And it's a great way of changing your state and your physiology.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
Very.
Now, you've developed some interesting ways of coaching people as well. I heard about your walk and talk coaching. Tell us about how that works.
Oh, that's such fun. So this was inspired by my son. I have a teenage son who just grunts, oh, mom, I mean, just doesn't say anything, my son. The boy is transformed. We live in Yorkshire, in the Dales. When we go walking, suddenly this non-communicative soul, I can't shut him up. I hear all the things about his dreams, about his friends, and I thought, that's really interesting. I mean, it can't just be Philip. Mm-hmm. And so I started talking to some of my clients. They're all in the city, and I thought it'd be a good idea to just go out for a walk. And often in the city, it's a park, or, you know, if you're in Yorkshire, you do have the beautiful Dales. And I've noticed something absolutely fascinating, that the quality of the conversation is quite different. There is something about sitting across a desk at someone and the connection you make and the nature of the conversation that is very different to when you're walking alongside. You've got loads of oxygen filling your body, that people disclose more. You know, we get to issues that are quite tricky quicker when we do the walk and talk coaching. And so I do quite a lot of it. I don't know, I offer it to clients, that some are really not interested.
Yeah.
Many will give it a go.
It's fascinating. I've heard of some financial advisors in the United States who, as part of their proposition, they do local walks with clients, and they've reported something very similar as well. They tend not to do it for a first meeting, but once you've got to know a client, in terms of building and strengthening the relationship, just the simple act of doing something physical together, the fresh air, it really does aid the relationship. It's absolutely fantastic.
That's great to hear, actually, because it kind of reinforces, you know, my experience of walk and talk coaching.
I'd love to hear some financial advisors give that a try and report back. Now, you've got a book out, which I hear is doing very well. Tell us about it.
Oh, right. So my book, can I show them? Can I show them?
Please do. Please do.
Right, it's just here on the shelf. Hi, IFAs. This is my book. It's called Executive Presentations, Develop Presence to Speak with Confidence and Skill. And our conversation really has been around this issue of internal presence and external presence. The book is really a manual for the mastery of business presentations. You really want to get on top of them. It's also a really easy read. I'm a journalist. I need to get to the point quick. I need to get people interested. So I've written the book. When I wrote the book, I was muttering. I was tapping away on the key. And so it's like having a conversation with me, really. That's how I've written the book. The ideas are really accessible. They're also road tested. You know, I've been in the business 20 years, training people in communication myself. So I know these are ideas that people can use and that can make a massive difference. And where I'm going with the book is to help people soar, you know, as speakers, to really be their best self as speakers. It's been fun, and I feel like it's been giving me a great sense of purpose writing the book, and I feel I'm serving a need that is still very much out there.
I think one of the main themes I've heard mentioned about this is that when you do get on top of this, some of the best ones are where people are their most authentic self. And maybe this is going back to what we were talking about earlier, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. When you get to mastery, you kind of don't worry about the rules. You've got the kind of key things under your belt, and it is about you showing up totally and compellingly in front of a person. And I just want to mention about the book. I'm so excited because this was a book where I spent months and months on end in a lonely office wondering if I'd ever finish the book and if it would make any sense. And it has been shortlisted for a national Business Book Award. So I'm really proud of that, and I hope that it will give readers an understanding that I've taken a lot of time with this, a lot of care to give people something that really works.
Yeah, well, good luck with it. I hope it goes well. Now, we're asking everybody if they can set a challenge for the financial advisors watching this. And so what would your challenge be, Jacqui?
So obviously it's around presence. So this is your challenge. I want you to do a presence audit. And a presence audit is like any kind of audit. You know, you look at data and you end up with a report, something that's important. A presence audit is looking at your own presence, and it is a 3-word report. It's a very short report. And the idea is that you look at yourself and your presence when you show up in the best way that you can. You know, what 3 words, what words would describe that? And I would encourage you to brainstorm a bunch of words, you know. And I think part 1 is you. What do you think are the words that would describe your presence? And part 2 is checking in with other people.
Yeah.
And what would they say? You at your best. What are the words? Because then we tap into some of the blind spots that we are not aware of. And then I think you want to boil it down to 3 words that you think capture your presence. So my presence audit, which was given me by a client actually, is professional, confident, and warm. And, you know, I show up, you know, when I'm talking to you, when I'm on the phone, when I'm writing emails, when I'm on a platform. And it's something about this easy 3-word report that you can just take everywhere with you. And you've got this guide and this benchmark about you at your best. So I would love you to embrace that challenge, to start the process of creating your own presence audit.
That's fantastic. That sounds like something, once you've done that and you've got your 3 words nailed, that really needs to be pinned up so that every kind of communication that you do, email, telephone, talking with colleagues, you're keeping that in mind.
Absolutely. Your new best friend, you know, on your phone, on your desktop, anywhere, so that you lean into this and you live it. You know, the idea of having it is that you live and breathe it, and it's consistent wherever you are.
Yeah, fantastic. Jacqui, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate that. For everybody watching this today, thank you for your time as well. At the end of this video, you'll have the opportunity to join a private forum where you can take up Jacqui's challenge, and you can take up lots of other people's challenges as well. You can report back on how you're getting on, ask for accountability partners, and really move forward. So once again, Jacqui Harper, thank you so much for joining us today. Great to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll see everybody else on the next video. Thanks for watching.